I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of different companies doing a lot of different things, a lot of tier ones, a lot of clients. Weirdly, I worked on Crossrail when I first came into construction, and I've also designed something that is on the rolling stock of the Crossrail train, so it's quite cool to go to the TfL rail now and see it, and hopefully it doesn't break. So yeah, so that's just a bit of the background. Working on very large-scale projects, and I think where my background differs from a lot of people in BIM is that I typically work on the capital expenditure point of the model, so not in design, not in facilities management, but where the money is being spent, and typically where people are being relatively inactive with data and using it correctly. So one of the best ways I've found to explain it is that we have two different sets of data in the world, really. We've got blobs, which are binary large objects, and that's things that people can interface with. So that's like PDFs, Excel documents, Word documents, basically all these sorts of things, photos. So it's things that people find useful to interface with, but computers really don't. And that's where structured data comes in. So structured data are things like programs. So every task in a program has a start date, a finish date, and a bunch of other data associated with it, a bill of quantities, even timesheets, health and safety incidents, all structured data that actually doesn't take up much space at all on a database or anything like that. But one of the biggest problems we have in construction, from my point of view, is that we take that structured data and we stick it into blob data. So we take a bill of quantities and we put it into a PDF. We take timesheets, we write them in pencil and we scan them in. So all of a sudden we've got a suite of documents that are really useful for a person to look at, but we can't really do much with them. So the problem with blobs is that they tend to be discipline owned. Because we're not sharing the data, we tend to do things like I mentioned, the programs. They're the planners have made the program, and it's very hard for anyone else to interface with that, which then brings about limited sharing opportunities throughout the business, and often you have to caveat documents that you share with other people and say, oh, that's 2 weeks out of date, that's 3 weeks out of date. So, and subsequently you get cross-project transfer loss, because I can't go on one project and look at their bill of quantities and go on another project and look at their bill of quantities without someone explaining to me why this bill of quantities is not conforming to the standard method of measurement that the other one is. So we can't really draw conclusions from the data in the way we should. And subsequently that means we're prone to duplication. And we've got this confusion around what the difference between data entry and data visualization is. Really, data entry is very, very simple. Upload the data, who's responsible for uploading that data, and then visualization is all the stuff of, well, I'm a planner and I want to see that data in this fashion. I'm a QS and I want to see it in that fashion. So typically a lot of innovation in construction has turned around polishing these blobs. So we reverse engineer the blob back into structured data. So we use Bluebeam to scan a PDF to count how many doors are in a drawing, when really someone put those doors there in the first place, and if we just registered them as they were going in, we wouldn't have this problem. And then subsequently, because the blobs are discipline-specific, the innovations then become discipline-specific, and then inefficient as a result. And then the other bit I've put on here is about odd buzzwords, because we start talking about blockchain and machine learning and things when we can't even access the data that we need to access at its core. And then hopefully, given the people who are sponsoring the event, I also consider that BIMs to be somewhat of a blob, because the way we interact with BIM models at the moment is very much how you would interact with a building if you turned up in the building when it was finished. You walk up to an individual element, you might draw a note on that element, you might take a screenshot or a photo of that element and share it with someone else, but you don't really do large-scale analytics of the model. So really, from a capital expenditure point of view, what I want to know is who's doing it, what we're building, when we're building it, where we're building it, and how much are we building? How much is it going to cost? And I can't do that on an individual element basis. I have to look at the model as a whole and draw conclusions from that. And that's something that actually 3D Repo has been very good about, because we use the API to start to pull that data out and do things with it that you couldn't do traditionally. So in order to integrate this data, we need to do a few things. So first of all, we need to identify our data input points, and that is in a sense of as-built progress on a construction job. Typically, a planner needs it, a QS needs it, quality need it, health and safety probably need it. Quite a few different people need that information. And in the traditional capacity, each one of those silos is going and collecting that information individually. Whereas what we should do is nominate a department to collect that information, collect it in a meaningful way, use standard vocabulary, so all our zones or our locations are mapped out and consistent, and data entry is kept to a minimum and vital information recorded. And then we can socialize that data across through the departments, but only once it's been recorded, so we don't get muddled up between that input and output. And then we can apply logic. And the way I've separated apply logic and analytics is we consider logic to be something that you can currently do now with the data, but you just can't do it quick enough. So you could draw conclusions, you could sum up the total quantities, you could do all those sorts of things. But then we move into analytics, which is doing things that you could never do with blob data, and start to look at those cross-project patterns. And as someone actually mentioned to me today, which is very apt, is they said, if I told you it had never rained on a Thursday, you probably wouldn't know whether or not that was true or false. But if you were planning something based around when it was raining on a Thursday, you would really quite like to know that information. But if you only looked at the weather report every day, you would never see that pattern emerge over time that it had never rained. I don't know if that actually is an apt thing. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a quick demonstration. The tools that we can get off the shelf these days extend so far beyond Excel that you can't even see it. And so what I was going to do was I was going to very quickly, in a minute...
You have 2 minutes, yeah?
I have 2 minutes. OK, I've got 2 minutes to build an app. So I'm going to build an app. So I'm going to use a standard Microsoft tool called Power Apps, and that just lets you quickly build these apps. And it's basically what Access turned into. And really, this is about democratizing the data on construction. Move people away from those spreadsheets that they've become so addicted to and move them into an environment where that data can be socialized. So very quickly, I am just going to insert a barcode scanner over here. And then I am going to stick a... Now I'm really panicking. Now I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to take a little drop-down box over here. And then in here, I am just going to type in that I have 2 options for progress. It's either complete or it is in progress. And if I make a spelling error, it's going to break the whole thing. And then I can even stick in a little image if I want. That should be on my phone now. So basically, all I need to do is go to 3D Repo, take out my phone, and I might have to do a here's what I made earlier situation because it may not have loaded quick enough. OK, I'm going to go with the one I made earlier. So I've got the app on my phone now, and if you had a whole business, you could deploy that to every QS in your business in an instant. They would have it. And then I can just scan in QR codes that I've sort of built earlier. And of course, now it's not working. Because my cookie on 3D Repo has expired. So the intent was, and it's worked every other time I've done this, is that as you scan things in on the app, the API on 3D Repo then moves the elements into a group that I've set up here to complete it in progress. So that was the intent. But what that means is that anyone with 3D Repo, anyone with access to this project, will be able to benefit from the records of someone just recording site information as they go.
Can you select the group? Does it highlight the objects? Or?
No, I got the error on there.
So the object didn't
No, didn't come through.
So everything is in progress.
Everything is in progress. But anyway, so I apologise for that going wrong. But otherwise, my 10 minutes are up. So thank you very much.
Thank you.